Anzac Cove. Every Year 9 unit gets there eventually. The boats, the dawn, the cliffs. But ask your students why the landing happened where it did. Most of them will tell you it was a mistake. The current pushed the boats a mile off course, and the Anzacs scrambled ashore on the wrong beach. But here's the problem. A century of naval historians have gone looking for that current, and they can't find it. The wrong beach story comes from one place, the official history, written by Charles Bean in the 1920s. It says the current swept the boats north. In 2015, naval historian Tom Frame actually went looking for that current at the strength required on that night, and guess what? It wasn't there. So if it wasn't the current, what was it? Well, that's worth a whole lesson on its own, and we'll get there. I'm Dallas, and this is episode 3 in a series on teaching history content for teachers and pre-service teachers taking on a topic that they didn't study themselves or they just need to brush up on. The next 10 minutes or so is what actually happened at Gallipoli, why the myth survives, and the distinction that will change how your students write about it. The content description is clear. The places of significance where Australians fought, their perspectives and experiences, including the Gallipoli campaign, the Western Front, and the Middle East. This episode is Gallipoli. The Western Front gets its own episode entirely, because the casualty numbers actually demand it, and because it's genuinely a different kind of fighting. And here's the assessment problem specific to this topic. Gallipoli is the one part of the World War I curriculum where most students already have formed an opinion, either from Anzac Day, family stories, or the movie. A student who repeats the legend is not explaining historical significance, though. They are reciting commemoration. Perspectives and experiences is not the same content as national mythology, and marking one as if it were the other is where a lot of units go wrong. So let's separate event from legend. Let's start with what actually happened. Late 1914. The Ottoman Empire enters the war alongside Germany and Austria-Hungary. Winston Churchill, the First Lord of the Admiralty, proposes forcing the Dardanelles straight by sea. Take Constantinople, knock the Ottomans out of the war, and open a supply route to Russia. In March 1915, the Royal Navy tries. Ottoman mines and shore guns sink or cripple a third of the attacking fleet, and the naval plan fails. So, the planners fall back on a land invasion instead. Australian troops training in Egypt since December are redirected. Their job? Land on the Gallipoli Peninsula, take the high ground, open the strait from the land side. 25th of April 1915. The covering force lands before dawn at a small cove roughly a mile north of the intended point, Brighton Beach. It later becomes known as Anzac Cove. By evening, roughly 2,000 men are dead, wounded, or missing, and the force holds a narrow strip of steep, scrubby ridge instead of the open ground the plan had called for. That narrow strip is where they stay. For the next 4 months, this is trench warfare on a cliff face. Neither side can push the other off. Disease spreads through heat and flies. Now, something that was supposed to take a week is taking 4 months. August, a last attempt to break the deadlock. At a ridge called the Neck, 600 Australian light horsemen are ordered to charge the Ottoman trenches, in waves, across open ground about the width of 2 tennis courts. The first wave is cut down in under a minute. An officer in the trench asks for the attack to be called off. He is refused. 2 more waves go over anyway. And here is what the record shows that the film does not. The order to keep going came from Lieutenant Colonel John Antill. He was Australian. Peter Weir's 1981 film gives that line to a fictional British colonel. It's a small piece of screenwriting that shifted the blame across the ocean. By November, the campaign has gained almost nothing since May. A winter storm floods the trenches and freezes men where they stand. 16,000 troops are evacuated for frostbite and exposure inside a fortnight. Field Marshal Kitchener inspects the position himself and recommends a withdrawal. The evacuation plan is built by an Australian, Lieutenant Colonel Burdnell White. Silent stunts to convince the Turks nothing has changed. Rifles rigged to fire on their own hours after the men had set them had already gone. 19th and 20th of December, around 90,000 men, guns, and animals are taken off the beach at Anzac and Suvla at night in silence. The Ottoman gunners do not even realize until the last boats are already offshore. The safest operation of the entire 8-month campaign was leaving it. 8,709 Australians died taking a strip of cliff that nobody kept. That figure has already been revised up once from earlier official counts, which was 8,159. Even the settled number is still not fixed. So, 2 questions are worth putting to your students. Why does the Wrong Beach story survive? And why does Gallipoli, a defeat, get remembered as the moment a nation was made? Bean wrote the current explanation into official history in the 1920s, and it held for over 80 years. Historian Robin Pryor, in the 2009 book Gallipoli, The End of Myth, argues no exact landing point was ever specified, so there was no wrong beach to land on in the first place. Naval historian Tom Frame checked the tides and found no current strong enough to move a boat a mile off course. Nobody has landed on a single explanation since. Now, the bigger claim, that Australia became a nation at Gallipoli. Historian Carolyn Holbrook, in Anzac, the unauthorized biography, points out the obvious problem with that timeline. Australia actually became a nation legally and constitutionally at Federation in 1901, 14 years before the landing. Peter Stanley, who spent 27 years as the Australian War Memorial's principal historian, makes the same point from inside the institution that actually helped build that legend. The commemoration you see every April is not fixed either. It's been shaped and argued over and rebuilt for more than 100 years. None of this makes the losses smaller. It makes the memory a separate thing from the event, and that distinction is the entire lesson. So on a Monday morning, teach these 2 columns. First, the event, what happened, checked against the record, the current, the casualty count, who gave the order at the neck, and then the memory. How has it been told since, by whom, and for what purpose? Put the film next to the official history, next to Holbrook's book, and ask which column each belongs in. Then run one inquiry question. If Australia was already a nation in 1901, what work is the Gallipoli story actually doing? One source for the classroom, the Anzac Portal landing pages, which set Bean's own navigation notes alongside the modern rebuttal. This is great for direct compare the evidence tasks. Then 3 books to read yourself. Robin Pryor, Gallipoli, The End of the Myth, Carolyn Holbrook, Anzac, the unauthorized biography, and the Australian War Memorial's own encyclopedia entry on Australian fatalities at Gallipoli, which shows it's working, revision and all. That's Gallipoli, the place most units already teach, with 2 things most of them leave out. I want to build this series around what you actually need, not what I assume you need next. So tell me in the comments or send an email which part of the version 9 curriculum you would like taught this way. Thanks for watching.